Welcome back. I'm Trish Wake, and this week on Barometer, we're speaking with Dylan Bartlett, author and marketing specialist. And we're just talking about life in general, aren't we, Dylan?
We are, yeah.
All right, so let's get at it. Let's talk about, in the first segment, let's just kind of do a refresh. We talked about life. We talked about family-oriented businesses and how to keep the entrepreneurial spirit and some advice for our small businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I will just say, just to touch on the family-oriented businesses thing one more time, because we didn't really talk a whole lot about that. I think on the whole, I don't recommend it. You know what I mean? Like,
it's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone. Yeah. Like I think I mentioned before, like, you know, my son, my wife, like, you know, we have quite a few family members who are in and out of our business at any given moment. And I think it works because of our specific family and kind of what each person brings to the equation. But, yeah, it's tough. It's hard. Yeah.
we can talk about that because I think often enough, like, how do you, because you do work with your son, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
How do you leave work at work and home at home? Because you know what? Even normal people who don't work with their family struggle with that. The minute you get through the door, you're still bringing some of that stressors home or vice versa, right?
Yeah. And to be honest with you, for me, it's not even just at home, right? Like it's everywhere. Like, you know, I think for small business owners, because you kind of get known in your respective town or community, I think it's really, really hard because you just, everywhere you go, you're kind of known as that person who owns that store or whatever. And that can be a challenge for sure. I mean, for us, like on a really basic level, we try to just not talk about it, you know, at home. But certainly when I get home, you know, like my daughter might ask me a question or my wife might ask me a question about my day, you know, and my son was there, you know, so that gets irritating. I think it gets more irritating for him than it does for anyone else, to be honest with you, right? Because I mean, he's very much like, he just wants to turn it off when he gets home and not worry or think about work at all, right? And for me, as we discussed, that's very difficult, you know, it's very difficult to just not think about it, you know, so yeah, I mean, downtime is nice, but when you start to go crazy and start to think about that stuff all the time, it's hard. But we just try to do other things. I think that's the key to it. You know, we just, if we find ourselves talking about work or our business, which does happen with my wife and I quite often, where we kind of keep getting dragged back into it, one of us will kind of bring it up again. We just kind of have a time limit that we put on it. So we just have a window of time over dinner where it's acceptable for us to kind of talk about work and business. Then once that window closes, if it's a half an hour or an hour or whatever kind of works with your day, then we just don't talk about it after that unless it's like a really pressing emergency or something like that. But even me, like I'm pretty good at putting my phone away, you know, and not checking emails and responding to them. It's, you know, I'm not a doctor who's on call or anything like that, right? So most things can wait, I think, yeah.
I think that's the key, right? I think so many business owners, entrepreneurs, you know, people with big ideas, they think that they have to, especially now with cell phones, have to be connected all the time, right? And it's you do need your downtime. You do need to be able to, even if you can't shut it off.
Yeah.
You need to be able to walk away.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll do as kind of a hybrid thing is I'll sit down with like if I do have some ideas that I need to get out, I'll put down the screens and I'll just take a reel, like a paper and a pen, you know, and a notebook. And I'll write down some ideas that way so that it still kind of keeps me off the screens, but it still kind of gets some of the ideas that I have kind of crashing around in my head out. And that usually makes me feel quite a bit better. If I start to feel, you know, a little bit anxious about my day, it's good practice, I think, to just write down what's really bothering you and figure out how you're going to tackle it the next day. Usually it takes like 5 minutes, but you feel a lot better after for sure. But yeah, as far as working with kids is concerned, yeesh. You know, that's all I have to say about that. You know, just maybe don't do that. Yeah. I mean, I think it's trying for both parties. I think I'm like, as irritating as you would think it would be working with your kid, I think that your kids think it's as irritating, if not more irritating, having to work with family members like their parents or whatever. So
I think well, just for us, even there's like this cutoff where I have 2 teenage boys, right? So they're like, no, Mom, I don't even want you on the school trip with me. Yeah. I could not imagine going to work with you.
I will say this, because at least you got that luxury. See, where I found that out was on a grade 8 snowboarding trip, where I went with my son because he asked me to go with him. And then about 2 hours in, when I was sitting on like a park bench having coffee with a bunch of the teachers and I hadn't seen him the entire time, I realized he actually didn't even really care if I came to this thing, you know? So that was, I would have loved to have had that heads up that you had. Like, I wish he had just said to me, Dad, I don't want you to come on this trip. That would have been great, you know? Like,
Why is that, Dylan? Do you not like the snow?
I do not like the snow. Oh man, how long do you want to talk about the winter?
Let's do it.
I have an overall dismay for the winter. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm wearing a toque right now, but I am not a fan of the cold weather. Yeah.
So I think even when we met, you know, toque, I was like, ooh, you know, hipster, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I'm
laziness. Yeah.
I'm freezing.
Yeah. Laziness and temperature. That's it. Yeah. I wish I could say it's like some kind of cool fashion thing. Cause I do, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I do like fashion and stuff like that, but no, the toque thing is just, yeah, I don't like the transition from inside to outside in the winter. I like to keep as much of the heat in there as I possibly can. Yeah.
So obviously just taking like a segue right back to that segment 1 when we talked about you moving up to Kincardine and driving through it only one time. You drove through in the summer, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Now, no, my in-laws, like I said, though, live in Port Elgin. So we had been coming to Port Elgin for quite a few years. So we knew the area pretty well. I don't want to say we knew what we were getting into because that's not the case, right? But we had a rough idea that the winters were bad, certainly comparatively speaking to the city. They're like night and day. But yeah, that was a huge adjustment for sure. It's just, the winters in Kincardine are pretty harsh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think winter can get here bad too, but you know, we should be happy because it's sunny here, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we don't see a lot of sun. Yeah, we have all the joys of the lake in the summertime. Yeah, it's a little bit harder in the winter because it tends to be a little bit gray. But everyone finds something to do and everyone stays really upbeat about it. So I mean, like the culture in the town is pretty cool. Like I said, I've been to a lot of small towns, you know, and a lot of them have a kind of their own unique kind of vibe, just like Mount Forest does. And yeah, I mean, I think like good, strong downtowns in small towns all across the province are really what makes us who we are, right? And I think it's those little differences between the two that I find really interesting. But at the core of it, I think they're all filled with just really, really good local people.
So what about helping our local businesses get through those winter blasts? Do you guys do that? Like, should they be focusing on promotion? Should they be focusing on their advertising right now? Or,
yeah.
You know, like what is it? What can help them see the light?
Well, the most common like kind of thing I see in like the hundreds, thousands maybe of businesses that I've been in across the province is just, you know, if you're in kind of a touristy place or a place where there's a little bit of downtime in the winter, your store can start to look a little bit boring. It can start to not really feel like you're getting in new products. The irony is you don't actually really need to get in new products. Like sometimes a thing that's from the book that I recommend people do all the time that always gets a huge amount of traction is just, you know, paper off your windows, get a gallon of paint, you know, move around everything inside the store. Like move the cash register location, move all of your displays, give everything a nice fresh coat of paint, close for like 2 or 3 days that are your slower days of the week. Make a big deal about it, you know, like get on social media, talk about how there's some exciting news coming and you're completely like revamping the store. It's not an expensive thing to do. I mean, there'll be a little bit of elbow grease, but if you own your own business, then you're aware that that's kind of your everyday thing. But that helps a ton, just like freshen things up and just breathe new life into it in a kind of a downtime for you, for sure.
Okay, so we're just going to get away from business for a minute and talk about our youth, as I'm the adult ally for our Youth Action Council here. And, you know, the number one question for our guys is usually like, oh, what are you going to do when you grow up,
yeah,
right?
Such an unfair question. Yeah.
It is. And you go around to schools and you talk to students and you talk to the youth.
I do, yeah.
And what is your advice for them?
You know, I think like some parents kind of hate this, but I think we've created a culture where it feels like we're supposed to rush our kids into college or university and make them decide what they're going to do for the next 40 years when they're 18, 19 years old. And I don't think that that's a fair thing for us to be doing to our youth, you know? So I try to get to them as young as I can, you know, to get them to kind of change their mindset. But generally speaking, the message is just, you're good at something, right? No matter what that is, you're good at something. So before you even think about what you want to do with the rest of your life, just identify what you're good at first. And then more importantly than that, if you enjoy what you're good at, then that should be the thing that you try to do. And you may or may not have to go to school for that. But I mean, there's so many young people who go to school and then end up never using what they learned in school, or they end up dropping out and taking something else. It's just, there's a lot of wasted money and a lot of wasted time. I think mostly because of the pressure that society puts on them to go do something. So I usually say to them, look, if you don't know what you want to do, but you want to go to school, take business. Everything's a business. If you don't know what you want to do and you don't want to go to school, get a job. Right? And that job will inevitably teach you what you don't want to do. You know what I mean? But generally speaking, yeah, look, you guys got to find something that you enjoy. And that's been the key to like my kind of growth and success as a business person, is just identifying what I'm good at and then finding other good people who have different skill sets than I do and kind of surrounding myself with those people.
So with that, like, how old were you when you had your first job?
I was a kid, like 12 maybe, when I had a paper route, and it was funny because I even remember when I was that age thinking about how many ways that this could be improved. You know, like how silly a lot of like what I was doing was when I had to like go collect money from people, and you know, people would give me like a 10-cent tip because they were mad that their paper was an hour late and stuff like that. So, you know, like I got like kind of the best and worst of it as a kid for sure, but yeah, I mean, I always knew that I wanted to do something different. I always knew that I wanted to work for myself. I don't think I understood what a big deal it was going to be, like, and how much work it was going to be. I don't think that anyone can really prep you for that. You know, like it's not for everyone, right? There's a reason why there's far fewer entrepreneurs than there are everyone else, right? I mean, it's a tough road, right? But yeah, I always kind of knew I was going to do something different. And like I said, luckily, at the time, it didn't seem so luckily because I've had a lot of hard times, certainly. But luckily, my life kind of ended up the way that it did. So it kind of forced me to push some of my plans back a little bit and kind of made me better off for it, for sure. So
then in your mind, what makes a good entrepreneur?
I would take resilience over anything else. Absolutely. Yeah, I really would. I mean, like, look, I'm blinded by ambition every day. You know, my expansion plans and my goals are consistently growing. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they're fortunate enough to find you know, I guess they reach a level that they're really happy with. And if you can stay there and thrive in that and be successful, like I always use the term local famous. You know, if you're fortunate enough to be local famous, if you and your business are known in whatever geographical location you want to be known in, that's a huge success, you know? But for me, yeah, it's like, it feels like my goals are constantly changing and growing, and I'm constantly wanting to do more, which, if I'm being honest, is kind of concerning to me, you know, like, because it starts to feel like that maybe there's no end to this, right? Which is, you know, I'm tired right now just even thinking about that, right? But yeah, I mean, so I think it's different for everyone, but yeah, for me, I think it's the excitement of the living locally and thinking globally is something that's always been super interesting to me. So I like the idea of being able to do big things, but still kind of cater to small places, you know.
I think that's kind of like a similar point between us, because I feel like every time I go to my parents or my friends and I got like this new bright idea, like, oh, we should do this, and oh, here's another, you know, event we should do or something like that, and they're like, oh my God, Trish, not again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I get that reaction from people all the time. It's like, God, you know,
not again.
I mean, I get it. Like, I'm not for everyone, you know. I'm the first person to admit that. It's a lot, you know. It's wave after wave coming at you, you know. So yeah, I get it. And I think, like I said, a lot of my close friends are entrepreneurs because I just think it's easier for entrepreneurs to tolerate other entrepreneurs, you know, like, because they just get it.
They know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same mentality, right? Like you just get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think that's the biggest reason why we've clicked with a lot of our customers long term, is because we just get it. You know, we get what it's like to kind of get into that, for sure. So,
you know, I think we talked about it a couple times. You found out that you were good at talking, you know, sales, whatever. But how did you define that? Like, are there tips and tricks that can help somebody else figure out their path?
Yeah. Like, so for me, the progression was kind of bizarre, like from the point of view that I was always into like health and fitness and stuff when I was a kid. So things kind of felt like that's the path I was going to go down. And I think like when I was maybe 19 or something, I actually like went to school and like took a bunch of courses and became a personal trainer. And then it occurred to me that like, I don't really care about personal training. I think maybe I want to own a gym. And then it occurred to me, I'm not actually interested in the business of fitness. I'm interested in just business in general, right? And then, to be honest with you, once I kind of knew that business and being an entrepreneur were interesting to me, I have a limited skill set, you know, like I'm not going to put on my resume that like I'm a better than average at Frisbee, you know, which is true, by the way, you know, I'm decent at Frisbee, right?
I will take you on.
Yeah. But you know what? The funniest thing about it is that there are people who make a full on living playing Frisbee, right? Like, so, you know, I guess what I'm saying is it could be anything depending on how big your imagination is, but on a really basic level, there's kind of like a 6 degrees of separation situation that happens with kind of careers that are in line with your specific skill set. So yeah, that's the place to start, I think, for sure. It's just, you know, identifying something that you love and that you're good at, and then from there should be at least a handful of options for sure.
Do you ever take those personality tests or anything to figure out what color is your color?
I have, yeah. I always get red.
Always get red.
Yeah, good or bad, love it or hate it, I always get red in those things. Red's my favorite color, and red is a big part of our company branding for sure. Yeah, in the beginning, just because it was like my favorite color. I wish I had like some science behind it. But yeah, no, over the course of time, we've kind of become known for that for sure. Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so, you know, we have a few minutes here. We can just kind of give like an intro to why exactly you're here. You're an author.
Yes. Yeah.
And is this your first book?
It is. It's kind of funny. It's actually my first 2 books that have become one. Yeah. So over the course of time, every time I get like a good idea or I give someone good advice for their business, I write it down somewhere. And then I take that idea and I start to kind of like break it up and I start to turn it into a step-by-step process of how you would execute that idea. I think I mentioned before, like what started to irritate me was just, you know, just nonsense advice that's just in the wind that doesn't actually help you grow your business at all, right?
You can
like,
dream it, it's there.
Yeah, exactly, right? And for me, it was like, no, as a business owner, I want real actionable advice. Like I want someone to ask me, how can I grow my traffic? How can I get more people to come into my store in the next 30, 60, 90 days? That's the advice that I was hungry for. And that's the advice that people ask me for. So
for sure.
that was kind of like part 1 of a book that I was writing. And then the other part was just crazy things that happened to me and customers and meetings I've had and just funny stories of unusual people. And that was kind of a separate book that I was writing. So I was kind of over the course of time writing both these books at the same time. And then just relatively recently, actually, like kind of back around Christmas time, when we started bouncing around names and stuff like that, we kind of came up with this idea, like my wife and my daughter actually came up with the name, but yeah, why wouldn't we just combine them two? Combine the 2 books together. So now there's real stories and real advice of some actual situations that I've been put in over 15 years of doing this. And then there's a ton, I think there's like 52 or something ideas, one for every week of the year. Yeah, you just flip to a page, pick an idea, do that idea. And if you do them right and if you do them well, at the end of the year, your business will have grown. And that's kind of the vibe behind the book. So it's a bit of a workbook from the point of view that you can actually write in it and set goals and kind of follow along. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm super excited about it.
Well, I'm super excited to continue on this segment and talk more about the book and bringing out some of the details, get people excited about it too. I think here in our communities and the surrounding communities, it would be an asset to have. We just need to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Dylan Bartlett on 88.7 The River.